Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to season 3 of Bite Size Balance. I decided to have Sarah Baillie in for this season opener because she's been here for the season openers for season 1 and 2, and because I prefer to record my podcast with her. It's more fun. Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
So we have a random kitchen sink list of topics that we thought we'd talk about today. Nothing too heavy or serious. We just wanted to ease everybody back into September and reflect on some things that have happened since we went on hiatus for the summer, and got a few just a little things that we've learned that we thought might be of interest to you guys for us to share. So first off, it is August 21st when we're recording this. Sarah had a birthday maybe since last time we were on here. I have a birthday in 2 days. I'm 51. In terms of an update as to what's going on with me, in exactly a week, we take my daughter up to University of Ottawa to start her first year of university in a health sciences program that she's really excited about. And then we come back on September 1st and pack up my son and take him to Acadia for his first year. So we got a lot going on. And then of course, we sold our house, which I've talked about. I think I talked about that last season. We sold our family home that we've been in for 14 years. And we are packing everything up there because we need to be out of here. Well, the movers are coming on September 9th. So my house is in disarray, and there's been a bit of a change of plans as to where we're going. So we'll talk about that a little bit. How's your summer been, Sarah?
Well, it's been busy. It's been up and down. I still have kids that need drives places and camps to go to. And I don't usually take vacation in the summer because it's not my favorite season. I'd prefer to take vacation in the fall. So I haven't really planned that yet, but as time moves on, I'll do that. We had the experience of both my kids being away for the first time in June to see my brother. Flew by themselves, did the whole big kid thing. And it was a taste of what your life is, a little bit more what your life is like. To not have kids around, we haven't really had the kind of the ability to do that in the past. So this is the first time in 14 years we've ever had more than one night. And it was very interesting to look at what that space looked like. My husband really missed them. And I mean, I missed them in a sort of motherly way, but I didn't miss their presence in that it gave me just some space that I just didn't even know that I needed. I felt totally confident that they were looked after and having the best time ever. And and it was just very interesting to have that space, and also then start to question for myself, what is my life going to look like as I ease towards the transition that you've been talking about for the last year. So we had 2 weeks of that, actually, because they also went to camp together. So that was interesting. And it's been pretty busy. I mean, my life doesn't change much in the summer because I just work and ferry children around, although they both learned the public transit system this summer, so that's been great. Some more independence and less driving, which I really enjoy. That's been kind of the things. We've had a few major events. Just recently, one of our dogs died quite suddenly. We had to put her to sleep, so I might cry talking about it, but that you and I were just talking about, what we've learned this summer and any of the sort of tidbits that have come up. And this has been a hard week for us because it's only been a week since she's been gone, and we've had another sort of traumatic event, and then my car broke down last night coming home from the beach. And so the crux of it is that what I've been experiencing, particularly in this last week, is a feeling of learning how to roll with things. It's kind of a constant journey for me, because I've probably mentioned in the past that that's not how I have operated. I'm a list maker. I like to know what's going to happen. So the day that we had to put our dog down, my son was coming home from camp, and I had this idea that we would all watch a movie together, or, debrief or whatever. And that's not what happened. And the world stopped, when you have to do something like that, and you have to tend to your own needs, your own grief, and also your kids' grief. And you have to make hard decisions. The whole world just stops, and all of a sudden things aren't important. And what was on my list for, this entire week is not important, because we're still going through it. And it doesn't matter that the bathroom's not clean. It doesn't matter that there's, no groceries. Like those things, the things that ticked off my list didn't get done. And then last night when the car broke down, a couple of years ago, maybe even last year, maybe even a month ago, I might have started thinking, oh, what are we going to do? Like, we have 2 cars, but are we going to be able to get these kids this place? And like, I would have started planning and organizing and kind of mini freaking out about how we were going to get to this family cottage thing on the weekend. And instead, I just enjoyed the fact that my kids were, being silly on the side of the road, and CAA was going to come and rescue us, and it wasn't cold because it was the middle of summer. And I was so grateful for CAA that I practically hugged the guy when he came. I'm just so happy for the service exists. And now this morning, I realized in order to come and record this podcast, I was like, oh, I don't have a car. I guess I'll have to bike. Like, there's just something that I think it's been building with the space, with my kids being more independent and things. But I think also the death of Flora has really affected me in that way. It's just like, yeah, well, it doesn't really matter what you planned, because something different is likely to happen. Mm-hmm. And the amount of time that you can spend stressing out about it is it's endless. You could, and I have done that in the past, and it seems like such a waste of energy.
Right. Yeah.
Just the fact that it's just the death of the dog was so quick that it really, I think it just shook me. It's just like, oh, you've gone from being slightly unwell and us having a few tests done and some blood work and stuff to, oh, you're dying. Yeah. And it was, I'm going to cry now, but it just was so, it was so arresting. Like, it's just like the whole world just stops. Yeah. And it makes you realize that the things that you can attach importance to, it sounds very sort of philosophical and I don't know, almost like you could put it on an Instagram post. The things you can attach importance to can be so small. Like, I could, the amount of energy that I could put into whether or not I get that. I don't know, I'm just thinking of something for my list right now, like the order I have to do from Amazon. That's just is on my list, and it keeps being there. I could put a lot of importance into that, and I actually have in the past been like, no, I have to get this thing done. Right. It feels like a lot of energy goes into that, but then when a death like that happens and the whole world stops, you realize, like, well, it doesn't really matter. I'll get this stuff done. It's going to happen. And so for me, it's been a good shake up. And then because we've had sort of 3 events this week, we say happen in threes, but 3 events this week, it's kind of compounded that. It's just like, oh, Right. So how do I bring this awareness of it's going to be okay, just attend to the things in the moment that are important. It's going to be okay. How do I bring this into my daily life?
Yeah.
How can I bring this feeling of, you know what, today I just need to be on the couch. I need to have one of your couch days. I need to do anything.
Yeah.
How do I bring that into my daily life and make it okay, and have it not make me feel guilty, or have it not make me feel like I should be doing something, and to just honor that. It's just, I think that a death gives you space to honor what you need if you are listening.
Yeah, I totally agree. We were talking before we hit record that we were talking about this, and because it's so recent for you. And I was just reflecting back on the year that my dad was sick. And then, more specifically, now that you're talking, I can think about like sort of the 3-day period where he was actively dying, and how it just felt like I was in a bubble for that weekend. Nothing else mattered. I didn't talk to anybody else. It probably didn't even cross my mind what I had that I was supposed to do that weekend. Like I don't remember thinking about anything else except what was going on in those moments, and getting my mom and dad through it, and my kids, my kids and everybody else and myself. But I was saying to you how I think I really learned that lesson. That was one of the great gifts in my dad's illness and death a few years ago. And I've said many times on the podcast, of course, that was when I stopped drinking, but also when I really, really like seriously leaned into a gratitude practice and started doing it every single day, and really not really doing it quite seriously, like as a way to program my neurological pathways. Like it wasn't just a fun thing to do. It was a serious project for me to try to get to a place where I felt like I had more joy in my day, and I was less pessimistic and less anxious all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I do think I went through that a few years ago, and it really has shifted things for me. And you and I have talked about it because we're friends. And, sometimes I say things to you about this for me and how it might benefit you to think more this way. And you're in a very different life place than I am. But I think what you're talking about is like really resonates with me. And it's something that I've been feeling for years. And it's been very helpful to me going through this summer, because I have, I had a period in the spring, as you well know, Sarah, and I probably talked about it a little bit on the podcast, where I was very sad about the fact that my kids were leaving, and really struggling with like what that was going to look like and how that was going to feel. And when we were selling their childhood home and going through that whole process of like decluttering and staging, and, we had to remove all of the stuff in the house that made it our house. Everything personal had to come down. And that always happens. Obviously, when you're selling a house, they tell you to do that. But for me, I had this like flashback during that process to the time when we were desperately trying to have children. We weren't living in that house, but we were living in our first home as a married couple in Calgary that we owned. And we were doing the opposite because we had social worker visits. We were trying to adopt, and we'd already had multiple losses with pregnancies. And I just desperately wanted kids. And God, we're just both going to cry on this podcast, apparently. No, and at that time, we were doing all these things to try to make it feel like a house that kids already lived in, right? Because we were trying to sell ourselves as parents and say like, yeah, we can have a great family here. And so we were adding all these things in. I was like baking cookies before the social worker came, so it smelled like kids lived there. And so this process that we went through this spring felt like a deliberate unwinding of all of that. And it was very challenging for me emotionally to do that, because, we all have so much invested in our kids, but I feel like I really had an awful lot there was an awful lot of effort that went into me being the lucky parent of my 2 children, both of them. And so it was just a really strange experience, and it did lead to a lot of sadness. And I think I processed a lot of grief this year, which is all great. I processed a lot of grief through the writing that I'm doing, and also through this experience of my kids, getting ready to leave. So the spring was really tough, but I really am very proud of myself because I've done a very, very good job, I think, of staying in the moment and of recognizing that I actually can control how I feel during my days. And it's okay to feel sadness and emotion, but I'm letting myself feel it, and I let it happen, and I don't judge myself for it, and it passes. And so even though the spring had a lot of moments where I felt sadness and grief, it was also a great spring. And we had lots of amazing things that happened. My kids graduated, and we sold the house, and lots of great stuff happened. And the summer's been much less sad for me. I've had a wonderful summer with my kids. It is, feels like the last summer. I know it's probably not going to be the last summer, but it feels like the last summer when your kids are both leaving for university for the first time. But I've really been able to let go, like that idea of like holding the outcomes loosely on your days is something I do all the time. And I've been doing it. I think when your kids become teenagers, you start doing that anyway, because you realize you can't predict when your kids are going to want to be with you. You can't predict when they're going to want to do certain things. And so my policy has always been, since my kids, got to that stage, I'm available. Like, if you want to do something with me, I'm available. It almost takes you back to like grade school when you were like desperate for friends. I'm like, I'll do anything for you. Like, you feel kind of needy in the whole thing, but if my daughter says to me, hey, mom, do you feel like going out for sushi tonight? And I had a plan to do something else, I'm almost always going to cancel that plan to go out with her right now, because, I know that they're getting ready to leave, and I've been kind of gearing up for this moment for the last few years. And I think the fact that my dad died when he did, and we went through all of that, allowed me to get into this state of really focusing on being in the present moment. And it's served me so well. It feels like the biggest gift, the thing I'm most grateful for, is the fact that I actually did that work and adopted this gratitude practice, and I've kept doing it. It's been so huge for me in terms of how I've gone through this, how I've been able to go through these last few years, and how I'm feeling about things as I go forward. And as you know, Sarah, it's not all happy right now. Like, I was in tears right before we hit record on this podcast. I mean, there are sad things about this, but I'm so excited for my kids. And I know everything's going to be okay. I just have this and I wonder if this is that knowing, that we've talked about, Sarah, like Glennon Doyle talks about this idea of knowing. For me, the knowing is really, and has been for the last few years, like, you're going to be fine. Mm-hmm. No matter what happens, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be dead. But until you're dead, you're going to be okay. Like, and I don't know when I'm going to be dead, but I know that I'm going to be okay until then. And it's a feeling that I did not have for the first 50 years of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wonder if that feeling of being okay, of connecting with that knowing, is like a combination of life experience, for one. You've been through some stuff, you've been okay on the other end. So you have that, whether it's part of the menopausal transition, right? There is space for you to explore that knowing, and to actually make confident choices around what's working and what's not working in your life, and feeling a little bit in the driver's seat around creating the things that you want and the things that you need. And then being able to actually access how that feels when you make those decisions, having that space to make the decision, and then having the space to actually inhabit it in some way and see how that feels. And I think some of that is conscious. You have to be like present in the process of learning that, but I also think some of it comes with this transition.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And for me, I would say the other piece that plays in for anyone who's listening, who's, had a hard look at their relationship with alcohol at some point and changed that, and maybe is, not using alcohol as a way to deal with emotions anymore, which is definitely a shift that I've made, and that I was using it as a coping tool and as a way to just not feel hard stuff. for many, many years, including like the first few years of my dad's illness. You know, when he got seriously ill, that's really when I started to realize I can't sustain this, because I had so many responsibilities with my own kids, my business, my, you know, and then also my dad and I wanted to help my mom and make sure she got through all of it okay. And, you know, I just couldn't go to the hospital all day and try to juggle two kids who were like at the time 13, and then also a business and drink every night, like go home and have a few glasses of wine before I went to bed. I just couldn't do that anymore. And so I think a big piece of it too, for me in all of this, like kind of feeling of this knowing, or whatever you want to call it, just feeling more confident around things, is that I have learned that I am 100% built for emotion as a human being. I can deal with it. I can handle it. It doesn't matter how intense or big it feels. It will not crush me. Mm-hmm. And if I sit with it, eventually it will pass. Mm-hmm. And that's been really helpful to me too, because I had this real knowing in the spring that it wasn't going to be like this forever. They weren't going to leave, and I was going to be, you know, just on the floor crying every day. I was going to figure this thing out, and that all of the feelings that I was having were just, I don't want to use the word just, actually, it's not a good, were at their core a reflection of the intense gratitude and love that I have for my kids, and the fact that I was able to be a mother in that way. So anyway, let's talk about what I did ask for, what I figured out that I needed that I had not asked for. Let's switch to something positive, because I'm getting teary again. So one thing that's happened that I haven't talked about yet here is that the original plan was that when we sold our family home, I would move out to, we're very lucky, we have this old farmhouse that I've restored out in Chester, which is, you know, about 35 minutes away from the city. And our plan was that when we sold this house, we would move out there. My husband and I would move out there, you know, when the kids left. But to be honest, the plan was not to sell the house this soon. But the market was such that it made sense for us to sell this year. And my husband is in a different position than I am, in that he's been building his company for 20 some years and has had great success with it, and is, you know, very satisfied and happy with all of that side of his life. And so feels less, you know, feels like he's kind of like, yeah, I could retire, you know, in a few years. Like he's just in a different headspace than I am. I'm in like this different place where I didn't actually get to ask. I really didn't have I could have asked for it, I guess, but I didn't want it, is the truth, until a few years ago when I had the capacity and the time. And I was like, okay, hold on. Like I haven't done the things I want to do yet with my business and my career. And so I'm really invested in that, and I am not remotely ready to retire. I'm so happy doing what I do. I love everything that I get to do, and I feel grateful for it. So this idea of moving out there started to terrify me, because it's beautiful, and you know, I have a great marriage and friendship with my husband, so I know that I like being with him. And so it wasn't about any of that. It was that I don't have any friends out there, and it's very quiet. It's a very quiet life out there. It's very peaceful and lovely, but most of the people who live out there are a lot older than we are. And I started to think, I work from home all the time. I'm going to be by myself, like, and very isolated. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, this is not going to be good for me. And so I asked for something that was hard to ask for, which was, what do you think about us renting a place in the city for a while? Like, what if we just had a place we rented? We have no interest in owning anything else right now, but what if we just rented something? Those discussions started, and we ended up starting to look for apartments, kind of like a crash pad for during the week, so that I could come into the city and work somewhere. And I wasn't even really sure where I was going to work, but I guess maybe in this apartment that didn't exist, or rent a space somewhere or whatever. And anyway, long story short, we ended up finding a place that is how many blocks from your house, Sarah?
I think 4.
It's like 4 blocks from Sarah's house. So it just all fell into place. And we are renting a really kind of cool, I'm excited about it. It's kind of a cool spot. It's right down by Sarah in the North End. I can walk everywhere. I'm, just excited about living an urban life again. It's been a long time since we've lived downtown. We used to live downtown in Calgary, and never have we lived downtown in Halifax together. So we've got a place that we're moving into in September, and we'll still be spending time in Chester, but I've got an office at this new place that's gorgeous that I'm excited about. And I'll be close to Sarah. I've got another really good friend of mine just lives like literally around the corner from me, and other friends downtown. So you can probably tell from how the tone of my voice has shifted from 5 minutes ago when I was talking about the sadness piece, how excited I am about all of this. And I just wanted to share it because I think it's a good example of trusting your intuition and your gut, and like noticing. I'm just so much better at noticing and being aware of when things aren't right for me. And if I look back to like my 40s, when I was still, drinking, perimenopausal, like in the throes of actively parenting, my kids were still young. I could not sort things out. Like I wouldn't have been able to tell you what was, I didn't even know, I wouldn't even have been able to articulate anything was wrong.
Right.
But, now I have this it's so clear to me that there were things that were missing from my life, and that I wasn't where I wanted to be, and that I was saying yes to too many things, and I was overwhelmed and overworked, but also under satisfied,
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm, this time last year, I was just turning 50 and I was dreading that. And this time right now, I'm about to turn 51 and I'm stoked. Like I feel completely different about my birthday this year than I did last year. And, I'm excited about what's coming up. And I've done I've got this like first after 50 bucket list that going like stuff I want to do. And as Sarah knows, I'm flying to California for a writer's retreat, which is super cool. I never would have done that 5 years ago, with my writing coach and Dowsett Johnston and a bunch of the women that I've been in a writer's workshop with now for the last year that I've formed friendships with, which is really fun. And I'm going to go see, my BFF out in Calgary at the end of September, which is going to be really fun. I just feel like I've got some things to look forward to, and not in a like, oh, I always have to have something on the horizon, but more just of a like, it's more like, I don't know. I'm more excited about the stuff I don't know about. Do you know what I mean? Like the things that I feel like this hope and this potential that there are going to be all these other cool things that are going to unfold for me over the next decade or two. And I'm excited for those things. And I just deep down trust that everything's going to be okay. And that is, for me, that's like this like menopausal knowing or settling that's happened. It's like, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Shitty stuff's going to happen. There's going to be really, really tough stuff. Things are going to blindside me, but I can handle it.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah. And I'll be right there beside you on the couch.
I know, Sarah's so excited. I actually ordered. So backstory here, just to keep it light, is that I have this really awesome couch right now at my house, but it's gigantic. And Sarah loves it. And she has like her corner with she takes all the blankets and all the pillows. And then both of my dogs descend upon her, and she sits there with her fake gin and tonic and tells me she doesn't want to watch bad reality shows. But then totally gets into the bad reality show with me, and we have a great time. And she was, I think, most sad and had the most grief about the fact that the couch will not fit into this new little spot that we're going to be in because it's quite tiny. And so I ordered her a couch, and I sent her a picture of it this week and asked her if she liked the couch I'd ordered for her, which is a mini version of the couch that we have that will fit there so that we can continue watching our reality shows. But now we can watch them like way more often, because you can literally come over for like one episode and be back home in an hour.
I know. We'll have to change the way we interact around that. The scary thing I told Wendy is that she's not the first friend that I've had that's actually ordered a couch for me.
I know.
I'm not sure what that says about me, but I really just make myself at home.
It goes back to Sarah's, like, what Sarah says all the time that I laugh about out loud to her face. about, which is that she is low maintenance.
Low maintenance.
Yes. So low maintenance that I had to order a couch for her. Anyway, we're excited about that. And we're excited about everything that's coming this year, but I just wanted to share that update. I mean, I'm sure I'll talk about how I'm feeling when the kids are, once the kids are gone, like there'll be a shift and a transition there. And my daughter will be coming home for Thanksgiving, which is great. So I'll be excited to see her then. And I don't know, my son's plan, he's only at Acadia, so he's just an hour away, he's talking about coming home more often, but I feel like there's a good chance he'll get there and just have so much fun that won't seem like what he wants to do, which is great. I hope that happens. So I'll update everybody on how it's all going. But for any other moms out there who are getting ready to move into empty nest mode, I feel you. It's a complicated time. Yeah. And we don't talk enough about it, which is, I guess, why I want to talk about it. I wanted to talk about it on this podcast, and I'm writing about it right now because it's a massive life transition for somebody when we have been, as we've talked about so many times on the podcast, we've been like just so focused on taking care of these people for so long. And it's very interesting to me to watch my husband go through it. And I've talked to my girlfriends whose kids are my kids' age about this, and they've all noticed the same thing, which is that it's not a big deal for Rob. Like, it's a big deal for me. He's excited for the kids, and, I know he'll miss them, but he did not go through the level of like deep emotional grief and work that I did in the spring. None of that was happening for him. He was just going to the gym, going to work, doing his thing. Like, it's just, and it's interesting to me how different it is for moms, and how it really, and that's a generalization, obviously. But in my situation, that's really how it seemed. And maybe his grief will be postponed, but I was a bit resentful in the spring of it. Like, why is this not affecting you at all? It doesn't seemingly it's not affecting you. But I think we do need to talk about it, because I think it's real. And I think you need to give yourself some space to feel all this stuff. Like, I've been trying to prepare for it. We've had a couple of ideas. Like, this is me being a Virgo trying to problem solve this. It's like, well, maybe if I just grieve now, I won't need to grieve later. Right. So I had this I'll just cry. If I just get this out, just let myself process this emotion, maybe it'll be done. And lo and behold, it's not gone. It hasn't disappeared. I do think it probably helped, but it hasn't disappeared. And I get blindsided by it at the most random moments, random, you wouldn't think it's going to happen. And then it does. Like yesterday morning, I went out on the back deck, and all of a sudden I was completely verklempt, because I thought, oh my God, this backyard, and all the things that have happened in that backyard over the last 14 years. But then the other thing I decided I needed to do was to get better at being by myself. So I started taking myself out on dates this year. So I go out for lunch by myself, order a latte, and bring nothing. This was my thing. You can't bring a book or a laptop. You just need to go and learn to be by yourself. And
how's that going?
It's pretty good, actually. It's funny. The first time I went out to a cafe for lunch, in Chester, that I love. And, I was sitting there and I was reflecting, and it was fine, right? There was no, what's the word when you're, oh God, this is a menopausal moment for me. When you're worried about what other people are thinking about you, there was no self-consciousness. There was none of that happening. I was like, whatever, I'm here. Hi, everybody, whatever. And I ordered my, avocado toast or whatever. And I was thinking about the first time I ever did anything by myself. And it was when I was, and this is crazy, but I was 22 or 23, the first time I went to a movie by myself. Yeah. And I remember I went to see Circle of Friends, that book by Maeve Binchy that had whatever that,
yes,
that cute mini driver. And I'd loved the book, and I went to see, I was in law school, and I was working at the Crown Attorney's office in Kitchener-Waterloo, and I was staying with my aunt and uncle in Kitchener-Waterloo. And I went to this little movie theater by myself and was so uncomfortable. Like, I just remember feeling so self-conscious and so uncomfortable and so nervous and so anxious and all of this about being there by myself. And as I was sitting there at the Kiwi Cafe, not giving a shit, I was like, of course, you had no idea who you were. You didn't even know if you liked yourself, because I really didn't know if I liked myself at that point. I don't think I did. I think or at least I thought I didn't. I was so self-critical and whatever. I didn't enjoy my own company. So how could that possibly have been a pleasant experience for me? Mm-hmm. And now it's fine. I mean, sometimes I really enjoy it. And other times I would prefer to be with you or someone else, but it's been interesting. And I'm trying to do more of that, like just do things by myself just to get comfortable with that again. And I was wondering like whether I would enjoy a trip by myself. I'm not sure if I would. And my husband loves to travel, so I'm sure we'll do lots of things, which is great as we go through the next 20 years. But I don't know, like maybe that's something that I'll do at some point too. So anyway, that's
interesting. I can totally foresee that in my future. I actually said recently, because my husband, interestingly, has gone from, he's English, so he's traveled a lot more in Europe than I have. Because it was so easy. But I would really like to go to see the fjords. I just think that would be spectacular. And it occurred to me the other day that I'm just going to go on my own. Like at some point I will get to the point where I'm like, well, he's turned into a bit of a homebody, and that's okay. He loves his home. He doesn't really want to be away from it. Yeah. He's good. And I feel the need to go out and do some things. And I, unless you want to come with me, but
I'd do that for sure. I'd be there in a minute.
I feel very comfortable with the idea of going out and doing that by myself now. But I was thinking about the period of time where you are, and so it's like foreshadowing for me watching you do this. Although my kids are 2 years apart, so they won't leave at the same time, presumably. But this for the fall, I was thinking to myself, well, I need to be less invested in my kids' emotions right now, because, preteens and teens emotions are all over the place. And I find that I can get still very invested in what's happening in the moment for them, which then they lose that moment 20 minutes later. They're not in that state and I'm still there. And so I'm finding that part exhausting and a little bit hard to manage in myself, not really in them. I mean, it's hard to manage in them too, and so it occurred to me that I need to actually just start doing a lot more things for myself. And just to not be there. I mean, obviously to be there when needed, but to not actually physically be there all the time, to witness this constant drama that they're going through as they're trying to individuate. I don't actually need to be there for that. So thinking about like what sort of things is when you say you're sort of preparing for the aloneness by practicing things like being alone. And this year you found another thing to occupy your creative space with the writing. I think that's a really important step to start moving towards. And I don't think women really who are sort of perimenopausal, as you say, it's hard to even see straight in that time, but moving towards menopause, like really kind of attaching to the idea of, I actually really need to do something for me that's going to help me to individuate, right? So the kids are individuating and we are also individuating into the next step of our lives. And what does that actually look like? So for me, is that, going back and exploring my love to draw, what does that look like? So it's just an interesting time of transition. And even though my kids aren't actually leaving like yours are, I feel, and I think probably I'm more aware of it because of my friendship with you, because I've watched you go through it acutely this last year. I feel like I'm becoming aware of, I come home from work and nobody cares. No, nobody, I mean, sure, they'd love to be fed. That would be a great thing. But there's hours now where I'm not needing to be that person. And what am I going to do with that feels good for me is what I'm kind of thinking about for myself, which is interesting. I feel a little bit ahead of the curve, actually.
I think you are. And I think it's good. And
Right.
that's why you and I are talking about this stuff, because I think I feel very lucky that I stopped drinking a few years ago, had this experience with my dad, like did this like work to try to get more present in my life. Like all of those things feel just like so wonderful to me that I was able to get that. And I do feel like I got that a little earlier than maybe I would have if all of that. Well, I definitely got that earlier than I would have. I think if everything hadn't been happening the way it was then. And I think I want women to know that. I mean, this is part of my coaching practice every day. I mean, this is not just me. The stuff that I talk about and feel and write about, it's everybody's experience that I'm talking to. Every woman gets to this place where they're like, oh my God, nobody told me they were going to go. Mm-hmm. Because all we talk about, we're raised as girls. It's like, okay, this is what you want. Like, you got to go get an education and a job. Then you got to get married. Then you got to have kids. Then, that's it. Like, there's no discussion of anything that happens after that. Yeah. But what we miss in all of that is that is generally over by the time we're about 50. Yeah. So like between 50 and 55, we're kind of done with that. And it's like, well, now what do I do for the rest of my life? Which is actually a whole lot of years. And I am encouraging women to start recognizing that and celebrating that, because it's actually really, really amazing. And, it's funny, I was reading, I think, Sarah, I might've told you this off like camera at some point when we were hanging out, but I read this piece to my writing workshop group that I wrote about like emptying the nest when we were selling the house. And I read it to them, and they were like, oh, that's like some people were visibly moved. Like that's really sad, or that's, like whatever. But then a couple of them were like, isn't there anything happy about this? Like, aren't you feeling anything good? Is there no hope? And, I was like, oh shoot, well, maybe this is too depressing, this thing that I wrote. And I talked to my teacher afterwards. I was like, do you think I should like go back in and like kind of pep it up a little bit? And she's like, well, are you feeling hopeful? And I was like, nope. Like, because at the time I really was feeling that overwhelming just sadness, because that's where I was at that point in time. But now I don't feel that way anymore. Now there's a lot of joy. And now I have this whole other kind of idea for like a piece that I want to write. That's, the next piece of that for me. So point of all of this is, I don't know what, I feel like I'm having a menopausal moment because I can't remember why I was telling this, but it's kind of connected back, I think, to that idea of just, there's this whole other piece that we don't talk about. And it's actually really great. I mean, how many times, Sarah, have I said to you recently, like, I can just do what I want. I keep saying that. I'm like, I get to do exactly what I want. Yeah. I can like hang out with the people I want to hang out with. If I want to go traveling, I can travel. If I want to quit my job, I can, well, I can't, I'm not going to quit my job, but like, I can decide to do whatever it is I want. If I want to live in the city, I can live in the city. If I want to live in the country, I can choose to live in the country. And I get that there's a lot of privilege that allows me to do all of those things. But my point is, this is my word. You know how Oprah has like a word for the year, or she used to anyway. I'm putting that in air quotes if you're not watching this podcast. I realized the other day, the word that I've been looking for the last couple of months, that is what I'm feeling, is agency. Mm-hmm. It's like I have agency again. And for 20 years, I didn't feel like I had agency. And I'm feeling like I felt in my 20s. Yeah. When I wasn't attached to anything, and I didn't have, I was going to school, and I was like working towards like something cool. And I was having these accomplishments that were just mine. I didn't share them with anybody else. They had nothing to do with anyone else. They were my accomplishments. I felt like I had agency then, and I have agency now again. And it's really great. It's really awesome.
If that could be the word that celebrates menopause, because for many women who don't have the mothering experience for whatever reason, choice or not choice, they also have an opportunity to have agency.
Absolutely.
And because the hormonal change is universal for women. Well, that's not true. It's not universal, but it's if we're talking in generalizations, then that transition of the change in the hormones opens up space. And
Right.
it opens up space to find that agency again.
Yeah.
And that's why I love calling menopause puberty with wisdom. It's like, because your puberty really doesn't end until your mid-20s, really. You know, it's kind of like there's that whole, yeah, sure, the hormones come on board, and then by the time you're 25, then your frontal lobe is all formed. You've got your executive function, presumably, and that's kind of the end of adolescence, is 21 to 25.
Yeah.
And that's when sort of the person has individuated to that point. They've, you know, this is who I'm going to be moving forward to some degree. And we get to do that again. And we get to do it again with wisdom, with the wisdom of a lifetime of knowledge. And it's so exciting to think about menopause that way, as opposed to this is the end of the road.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing else after this.
Yeah. No, I really feel like this is the end of one piece of it. Obviously, I'm still a mother. Obviously, I'm still engaged with my kids and they still need me. I'm not suggesting that that's not the case, but it's a very different type of need. And from a physical perspective, I have a great amount of freedom, again, and the emotion that goes with it, or the feeling that goes with it, is that agency. It's that self-determination. It's, you know, I'm in a committed, happy marriage. So I'm concerned with my partner and his needs and wants and, you know, dreams and all the rest of it. But I guess I'm lucky this way, in that he's very happy to support my dreams and I'm very happy to support his. So if there's something that I want that isn't what he wants, then I'll probably go get that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it just feels like I have the ability to choose that if I want to now. And before, it was contingent on taking care of all these other people first, which made those things impossible. And I don't have that right now. So yeah, I think this is actually a really good day to record this episode, Sarah, because it is the 21st and I do turn 51 in 2 days. And I do remember recording that podcast before my 50th birthday. Like, I think I recorded it actually on my 50th birthday. So almost exactly a year ago. And, you know, was feeling there was a lot of like trepidation there. And also I hadn't, you know, I don't think I had really gotten to the place post menopause of like everything kind of evening out with my hormones. I was still trying to figure all that stuff out and, you know, working through that. And now I think I've found my place of right now anyway, of like good balance and an approach that's working for me. And I feel very grounded and really very solid in all of it. And I wanted to make sure that I let people know that a year can make a really big difference. And also that this is actually, it's pretty great. And I think I'm more excited about my 50s than I was about my 40s, like way more excited.
I remember Oprah saying that, just to bring it back to Oprah.
Oh, yeah, I know. Oprah. I do too.
Probably being about 40 when she was saying 50 is the new 30 or whatever, you know.
And I remember thinking, like, I remember, this is going to sound terrible, but I remember thinking, oh yeah, you just have to say that because you got to make yourself feel good right now. Because I was probably like 30 or 35 at the time, right? I don't know how old she is now, but so yeah, I remember thinking like, well, of course you're saying that. You just turned 50. You have to say that, right? But I really feel that way. And I remember turning 40. I wasn't too happy about turning 40 either, let me tell you. But I remember turning 40 and feeling like it was over. It was the weirdest feeling. It was like, oh my God, I just have to keep doing this. Like nothing's going to change. And, you know, I was right. Like perimenopause was definitely rearing up for me then. My kids were still, they were 8. I was right in the thick of parenting and it was exhausting. And, you know, I wasn't where I wanted to be with my business. And, you know, my dad had been diagnosed and was sick and, you know, all of that stuff was going on. And I just remember thinking, oh God, this is it. Like I remember thinking I peaked.
Right. I
have peaked. And now I'm like, I don't think I've peaked yet.
No, you were sliding into that U-bend of happiness, you know.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Like at 45 to 47, women are the least happy.
That episode, we haven't aired that yet, Sarah. So when this episode airs, that episode, Sarah and I recorded an episode a few weeks ago that's going to air, that where we talk about this U-bend. So explain what you're talking about, Sarah, with this U-bend.
They've done studies in happiness that basically if you if you track a U at the bottom is when someone would feel most unhappy and unsatisfied with their lives. And consistently women at the age of say 45 to 48 fall in that U. So it's kind of a slide downwards. And then at the bottom of that U is kind of the mid to late 40s, which of course tracks exactly with perimenopause.
Yeah.
And then there's a steady climb upwards to the other side, which is really, I think I see it in my office all the time. All the women I talk to are really struggling in their late 40s. And you were in that slide into it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And so I'm now on the other side of the U on my way up, which is great. And it feels awesome. So I'm really looking forward to this season 3 of the podcast. I've already recorded about 8 episodes for this season, maybe more than that, actually. I've had some great conversations with some amazing women, and I have lots of other cool things lined up. Sarah will be back regularly as always. Now she just lives down the street from me, so it'll be even easier. You'll get sick of hearing us and about our stories. And we're always, as always, we're open and we really want to hear from you. So if there are topics that you would like to hear either Sarah and I talk about, or topics that you'd like for us to try to find expert guests that we can bring in to talk about, we are always happy to try to be responsive to that. So send me an email or DM me and let me know what it is you're interested in, want to hear more about, and we will try to bring that to you on Bite Size Balance. So I think that's it. Sarah, was there anything you wanted to talk about specifically? No.
Good for now.
I was like at the beginning, as usual, I was like, if we just do a half an hour today, that'll be great. And now we're at like 45.
In my head, I was like, we could never do half an hour.
Yeah, we never do a half an hour, but anyway. I hope everyone is having a good beginning of September, and that that you have you're as excited about things as I am. And I don't know, Sarah's not quite as excited as I am, but I'm holding the excitement. I'm holding the excitement for Sarah for when she gets here. She's on her way, I think. So.
Oh no, I'm excited. I always love September. September is my favorite. Get everybody back into a schedule. Love that schedule.
Yeah.
And but basically because it frees up space for me, and it's my favorite season. So happy fall, everybody.
Okay, guys, we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Bite Size Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a burnout and balance coach, I help busy high achievers like you create a more balanced, joyful life. Ready to create a life you don't want to escape from? Download your free Blueprint for Change now. This incredible workbook includes some of my favorite coaching tools and will help you get clear on what you need more and less of in your life. Grab it at www.wendymccallum.com/blueprint. That's www.wendymccallum.com/blueprint.